Now, when you invoke the word theocracy, if you think about it, most of the images that come to mind are not the images that you are drawing from the real world. Because if you spend a bit of time thinking about it, then you realize that there isn't really a good example of what we would actually call theocracy, because theocracy, in the technical definition, in the most technical sense, implies that the entirety of a society or civilization is ruled and guided by clerics, priests, the religious. And as a consequence, every aspect of society is permeated by this religiosity. And even in historical settings, there aren't really that many examples of purely theocratic states. You can look at places in the Middle East, both historically and currently, and even, for example, a place such as Middle Age Europe, which had the Catholic Church, which wielded enormous power, wasn't really a good example of a quote-unquote theocracy, at least not in the way that we typically envision theocracy. And so I think we need a little bit of wriggle room when we talk about theocracy or the theocratic when it comes to culture or society. And you can have a society with religion without it being a theocracy at all, and you can even have a fairly religious society that is not theocratic in nature. But I know a lot of people have mentioned the fact that there is a striking similarity in terms of the precepts, the tenets, etc., of quote-unquote wokeness as compared to more conventional religion. Again, I'm not the first person to mention this, but you have sets of sacred words, things that you are allowed to say, things that you aren't allowed to say. And these words, whether they're uttered inside a context or outside of context, are always good or bad. And we have historical examples for that. There was never a case back in a formerly religious Europe or a Christian-derived United States where constantly swearing and invoking the name of the Lord in vain, as the term goes, was thought to be appropriate, even in a certain context, a citation, for example. And so it is with a lot of words these days when it comes to wokeness. It's not that distinct. And of course, there isn't this metaphysical framework that tends to go hand in hand with religion, but we could describe it as an earthly religion. But beyond that, there are aspects of the theocratic as it pertains to contemporary wokeness. And when I say theocratic here in this context, what I mean is that we're all paying attention to this religion, whether we are adherents to it or not. And this bears a strong similarity to things you can observe in the past. For example, in the Middle Ages, although it wasn't a pure theocracy, there were still quote-unquote secular leaders, kings, feudal lords, etc., everyone was paying attention to what the church was saying, whether they believed in the tenets, precepts, prescriptions of the church or not. The ones who believed thought it was probably great, and so they were happy to enforce whatever the church said that they were supposed to do, and to go after people that the church didn't like. And the people that didn't believe in the church or in the teachings of Catholicism/Christianity, they had to pay attention too, because if they didn't, they would get into a lot of trouble, possibly even lose their lives, or any number of horrible things in between. So there's an incentive in a theocratic, if you wish to use that word, society to always pay attention to the religion in question, whether you're a believer or not, because everyone is drawn into the spectrum of this religion. Well, why am I saying this? Because that is, effectively, our situation in the current year. We in the West are citizens of an increasingly religious society, not in the conventional sense, not with the metaphysical trappings or the history of the church, but of a secular religion. But more importantly, it's become highly theocratic, because the distinction that I was trying to make here was that you can have a religious society where you just ignore the religion and you're okay, or one where you can't, and that's when things become slightly theocratic. So you may or may not be a believer in the religion of wokeness. You may believe in the sacred words, you may not believe. You may oppose the notion that there are sacred words. Whatever your position might be, if you are a participating member of contemporary Western society, above all in the United States, and everything that emanates from the United States, then you are subject to this theocracy. And by that I mean, even if you don't believe in this stuff, which I certainly don't, you still need to pay attention. Because even as I speak, even as I record this, as you're well aware, YouTube itself is a branch of the Church of Woke. It is an enforcer of the precepts and tenets of wokeness. And so I, as a non-woke person, have to adhere to some degree, if I want to retain my channel, to the tenets of wokeness. Not because I think they're great, not because I believe in the absurdity of sacred words, particularly in a secular context, but because that's what happens when you get a society or a culture that becomes increasingly theocratic. The rules start applying to everybody. Some people love the existence and presence of sacred words, and other people don't, and the things you can do and the things you can say, and the converse, the things that you can't do and can't say. Well, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because more and more, every aspect of society is being infiltrated, or if you wish to use a harsher word, infected by this religion of the woke. And I don't just say that for no reason. I'm not just talking about YouTube and social media. I have heard bigwigs who aren't exactly the most woke people claim that they have been to meetings, engaged with people in the highest positions of tech and business who either greenlight this stuff or are too afraid to intervene and to say something for fear of losing their business or their position. And that's what happens when you live in what has effectively become a theocracy. You end up paying attention to everything you do and say, not because you believe in the crap, but because you have no choice. If you want to live a life without being punished, and that's the religious aspect, you have to adhere to the tenets of religion. If you are running around, for example, in 1230 AD in Rome, screaming about how awful Jesus is and how terrible the church is, you would have problems. Now, you can do that now without any problems whatsoever in most parts of the Western world. However, if you were to say the equivalent of take your pick of whatever is on the table for the religion of wokeness to take down, you will receive similar problems. Of course, you probably won't be executed, but your life could be made very difficult, and for that matter, it could ruin your life because of the potential ramifications down the line. Because one of the tenets of wokeness, in contrast to Christianity, ironically, is that there is no forgiveness. Whatever you've said in the past, whatever you've done, if it somehow runs in contradiction to the religion of wokeness, then it is a sin, and it is original sin. So you have that mixture of Christian original sin, but also at the same time the inability to forgive the perpetrator of the sin. And you can even see these trends in government. There are all kinds of things that you cannot talk about, not because the person is malicious, but because they're important or relevant to society and the world at large, that you can't talk about. You can't talk about because the religion of the woke and their inquisitors will come down on you. And if they do that, your life could very well be over. They won't execute you. They'll just make it so you can't do anything, say anything, or even earn a living potentially. So this is a very dire situation we find ourselves in, indeed, because if you're not particularly religious, and I'm certainly not very religious at all, I don't have a religious bone in my body, I'm no more a fan of the religion of wokeness than I am of traditional Christianity or Islam or take your pick. I don't believe in any of these things, but of course I have to adhere to, at least in part, the tenets of wokeness, because if I don't, like many people, I'll get in trouble for something I might say. And unfortunately, I see no reason why this would be trending in the opposite direction. It seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. And the one question I pose to myself, as I do to many people out there, if you're listening to this, is why is it that collectively the powers that be simply did not put their foot down years ago to the burgeoning religion of the woke and say, look, that's all well and good, you can believe that crap, but we're going to move on and get on with our lives and just act like normal people. No one ever did that. Everyone is terrified of doing it, apparently even great business magnates and tech heads. And so it really does, in fact, remain a great mystery as to why these people were tolerated and allowed to gain the power that they did gain. And that is a situation we find ourselves in today, unfortunately. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. As always, please hit the like button, subscribe if you've not yet done so, hit the bell icon to be informed of forthcoming videos, share the video, and if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. Everyone take care. May the gods watch over you. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.